I'm going to introduce our first speaker on this esteemed panel. It's Director of Education for the School Business Officials, Debra Cunningham.
Thank you, Keshia, and I want to start out by thanking the Rockefeller Institute of Government and their staff for collaborating with us on this symposium. At New York State ASBO, we're interested in improving the connection between the use of resources and the results of those resources, or the outcomes of those resources. So having these forums and having these discussions is tremendously important. This second panel will discuss practical implications of making school resources matter. I'm going to discuss why this is such an important topic to all of us and why business officials are critical players in realizing strategic resource use. I'm going to discuss the current status of strategic resource use in New York State school districts and some of the components of a successful strategy. I'm then going to turn to my fellow panel members to hear the specifics of their approaches to strategic resource use. Our goal is to give any school officials in attendance specific ideas of what they can do tomorrow, next week, and next year to make school resources matter. So why is making school resources matter so important? A number of really important reasons. Because we need to spend less and get more. I don't think we're going to be returning to those days where we had generous increases every year, as Chuck Szuberla mentioned. Because we can't afford an education system that doesn't prepare the majority of students for success after school. And essentially that's what we have now. We can't afford that as a nation. And we also, it's also important because college and career readiness will never be achieved without making every dollar count. That is a lofty goal. We need to really make every dollar count if we're going to get to that goal. And if that's not enough, making school resources matter will lead us to greater education success. And this is important because our success in education is directly connected to the economic viability of the state. So why are school business officials critical players in the process of strategic resource use? As masters of education, finance, and management, school business officials are uniquely positioned to be what we call education CFOs. They've got one foot in education, one foot in finance, and they can talk both sides. They are strategic players that collaborate, evaluate, and make decisions about ways to get the greatest student learning from all of the district's resources. Strategic resource use is what school business officials do every day. They're constantly looking for ways to maintain services more efficiently and to support programs and services that do a better job at educating students. I want to give you some examples of this. And we have this Business Connect network where we can talk to all of our members. And so I just threw it out. I said, well, we're going to a symposium next week, and give me some examples. And here are some of them. Carefully managing attrition of employees, redirecting positions to respond to enrollment changes. We know we have a funny thing going on in New York State with enrollment. Many districts, enrollment's declining. Others, it's growing. The budget and the program needs to change to accommodate those. Another example is deploying breakage savings that result from staff that leave to invest in new STEM programs, strengthened early childhood programs, classrooms that provide differentiated learning to ensure every student is fully engaged and productive, and job-embedded professional development for teachers. Examining BOCES-wide resource room programs and the incidence of students with disabilities to ensure programs are filled to capacity. We have an example in Western New York where all their resource rooms were 12-to-1 mandate, but they were filled 6-to-1. They took a look at all of where the students lived and where the programs were, and they reduced the travel time for the students, but filled the classes to 12-to-1, and what happened? They cut the cost in half. Also, school business officials are looking to use BOCES services strategically. In some cases, they're opting in and they're sharing the services with BOCES. In other cases, they're saying, no, we're going to do it in our district because it's more cost-effective for us. So I think that's also an interesting thing that's going on. Another example is replacing 2 teacher aides with an instructional coach for K-12 ELA. Think of the impact of that on student achievement. Strengthening the district's technology capacity to support strategic resource use by hiring a director of data. We're going to hear a little more of this from Windsor. And then cutting costs. The school business officials are cutting costs left and right. And what they're doing is they're trying to free up resources so they can direct it for programs that benefit student achievement and support the district's missions. So examples are shared pupil transportation to out-of-district programs, reducing printing costs, such as having employees print pay stubs, reducing labor-intensive practice, such as delivering paychecks instead of having direct deposit of paychecks. You get the idea. Looking at everything in the district, there are little things, but little things add up to be big things that allow school districts to reinvest dollars in programs that support the district's mission. So if this is what school business officials do every day, why are we here? Because the school business official job varies around the state, from those that simply balance the books to those that are fully engaged in the strategic direction of the school district. There's much to learn about how school districts can use the capacity of the business official and how business officials can grow professionally. We're also here because strategic resource use is a skill that can be greatly enhanced by collaboration with researchers, and we are bringing much of that research to you today. And I thought the conversation we had in the last panel was interesting. Research isn't trying to dictate to you what to do. They're trying to give you some thoughtful information that will allow you to try different ideas. And then also in our Deputy Commissioner intro, Chuck mentioned that this is timely, and I think it is timely. We had 15 years of budget increases that were about 5.6% every year. Now in the last 5 years, they've been about 2.2%. We're only beginning to be open to the topic of using school resources cost-effectively and strategically. So what will strategic resource use involve? The components include clearly defining the district's mission and learning goals. You got to know where you're going before you can go there. Having good data and the capacity to use the data on student performance, resource allocation, and student characteristics. And engaging in collaborative discussions about the best way to use resources in areas supported by research. So these are collaborations in the district, in the community, and with other districts. Those collaborations are critically important. We cannot afford to act in silos. So we have a terrific panel here. Stephen Frank is from Education Resource Strategies, which is a nationwide think tank and research outfit that helps school districts all over the nation use their resources better and make better decisions to put in place programs that will directly affect student achievement. Andy Fiorentino from Windsor and Victor Hall from Altmore Parish, Williamsville. Did I get that right? APW, are business officials that participated in a collaborative project with Stephen and Chuck Szuberla at the State Education Department to look at the resources and examine where they stood, what they could do differently, and start to make those changes. So I think this will be very interesting for you to hear these results. So I'm going to turn it over to Stephen Frank. And I hope, Keshia, I didn't steal your change, but it was natural.
While she's pulling up the presentation, can I get a show of hands? How many of you in the room are a school business official? How many of you, keep them up for a second, how many of you are a past school business official? It's about, looks like about half of the people in the room. When I think about this job in New York, it always feels like one of the more thankless jobs. First of all, how many of you have ever heard that New York spends more on education than other states, right? And how does that make you feel as a school business official? I actually should, I keep making this point. It should make you feel really good, actually, because what it represents is a public commitment to education. You spend money because you receive money. There's a public commitment to education, and it is not bad to spend money on education. The question is whether we're spending money the right way, right? And so when we came into this study, we were working with 8 districts, and we know right from the start, when we're working here in New York, that we're going to find, when we compare you to benchmarks elsewhere, that you are spending more money. That's not the question. The question is what are you spending the money that you have on, and is it things that we think are going to matter? As a school business official, okay, you raised your hands before. How many of you see it as your job, fundamentally, to make resources be used more effectively or efficiently in your school district? Does that feel like that's a core part of the job? So I'm going to ask here for some audience participation as we get started. And I'm going to ask, what are the big things that we spend money on in New York State where there's a lot of money going to it, but we think that it's probably got a pretty low ROI or not very effective at improving student outcomes? Just kind of yell it out or raise your hand, and then kind of top 5 things. Anyone? What are the things that we spend a lot of money on that we actually think probably it doesn't matter a lot? We've read the research, right? What does the research suggest?
Severance packages for students.
Okay, severance packages. Other thoughts?
Well, health insurance and retirement don't directly affect student achievement,
Okay.
but they're necessary items.
Maybe necessary items, yeah.
In some instances, technology.
Technology. Legal fees. Yeah. So there's a lot of things that we spend money on that don't have a direct impact on student achievement, but they may be necessary, right? When we're thinking of the big impacts, one of the things we try to look at is what are most of the dollars going toward? And then we try to say, is this something that research suggests has a big impact? So when we started looking at New York, we kind of divided it into instructional and non-instructional, right? And we said, what are these things that are consuming a lot of the resources? We found a lot is going to what we call steps and lanes, right? Experience and education pay. What does the research suggest about whether that's closely tied to student outcomes? It suggests it's not, right? That's not saying that we don't want to pay teachers a lot, and we're not saying, but it's saying that what we are actually paying them for isn't closely aligned with the research on student outcomes. So it's a pot of resources that could be used differently as part of a compensation package that might actually have a bigger impact if we structured it differently, right? So it's about $10 billion in the state of New York. Whole day class size reduction, that's non-strategic. Lots of money going to that here, and a lot of it's in under-enrolled electives and things that weren't strategic, right? Duty periods that teachers are assigned that are non-instructional during the day. And all of these things, none of these things are bad things, right? These are things that when we look at them, we say, you're spending a couple of $1 billion in the state on that. Is that something, when teachers aren't actually having time to collaborate with each other, that we should be asking them to do, or should we maybe be having them doing something different? General education TAs, placement in special education of an unexpectedly high number of students. All of these things are kind of like the big 5 things that we saw consuming up to over 40 cents on the dollar goes to these types of things in New York State. How many of you as as school business officials are any of those things in your job description to change? Raise your hand if changing those is in your job description. So I submit that if we're saying that you guys are responsible for making ROI happen, right? If we take all of the lowest ROI current expenditures off of your plate, then the only thing that you could do maybe is think about the very high ROI things, right, that you could start. And where is Professor? We had some of those suggested to us. More rigorous or selective processes for tenure, or bigger investments in recruiting and screening. Those things have very high ROIs in all the simulations that we do. How many of you as chief business officials of those things are on your plate? Raise your hand again. And so, nobody's raising their hand, just in case you can't see it from either side. But the fact is that we just went through and said, here's a whole bunch of very low ROI things, and here's a whole bunch of kind of high ROI things. The chief school business officer's job is to actually improve the effectiveness of research, but these things are not part of your job. So that actually poses a conundrum. And I love the Shane and Jesse in the last presentation talked about the process of doing effective, of strategic planning for resource effectiveness in districts. And I submit that one of the problems that we run into as school business officials is exactly this process issue. That what happens is we say, okay, let's have a strategic planning process. We want to do something that is significantly better for our students. We go through the whole thing. It's for the ELL students in literacy, and so let's look at the program we have for professional development for teachers right now. Let's look at 3 of them. Let's find the one that has the highest expected ROI and pick that one. And the problem with that process is that we've already thrown off the very low ROI and the very highest ROI opportunities before we even chose that we're going to choose on professional development, and so the process itself was flawed. So what I'd like to kind of suggest here as we go through this, I'm going to talk about some of the opportunities that we saw in New York districts and some of the things where the resources were being spent, and then I'm going to suggest a process whereby, as a school business official, you could actually bring some of these things back onto the table. How do we actually get some of these really low ROI and high ROI things back onto the table as a school business official so that when we're doing our job, we can actually really focus on the things that maybe we can influence the most. So what I'd like to do is start with this. What are the findings from our study that we did? Well, we compared the New York districts to a set of non-New York benchmarks, and we said, we know you're going to be spending more resources, right? But what are you spending them on? And what we found was that about 3.4, and these were New York benchmarks that had a similar cost of living. And so, in fact, they were a slightly higher cost of living, and so we've already accounted for that. About over half of it was going to more staff in the buildings. And then 1.2 thousand of it was going to higher compensation, even after we adjusted for demography, and then $500 per pupil was going to non-compensation related stuff. What it meant was that if we compared you to these districts that had a similar cost of living to New York, in a school of 500, there were 9 extra bodies in the building. If we compare New York to the median state, it's actually over double that. In a school of 500, that difference more than doubles, almost triples. What it means is that there's a lot of bodies in the building, right? And this kind of just shows at a high level where they are. 4 of them are additional general ed teachers and TAs, almost the same number for special ed, and then you have other school-based positions. So this is what they were being spent on. We started looking at what does that actually mean in terms of, do you have an opportunity to change? And what we did here was just this is just sort of an illustrative concept that no matter how underfunded you may be relative to what the state has promised to give you, the fact is that there are opportunities here to rethink the way that you're staffing your schools. You tend to have 1 adult for 7.5 students, and class sizes, some of them are very high, but on average, when you include everything in, there are about 18. And so even within that difference, there's just a lot of opportunity to rethink how we are organizing and structuring classrooms. We started seeing that one of the big differences here in New York was that New York teachers tend to have a lot more non-instructional time, more time during the day that could be used for planning or for professional development or collaboration with each other. In the districts that we studied, very little of it was being used for teacher collaboration. And so we saw that as an opportunity. But the idea here is, as we try to think about resource effectiveness and resource efficiency, to take off some of the blinders and the idea of a one-teacher classroom as the paradigm for how we do this, and start thinking about what can we do if we had schedules that, because people, time, and money are all resources, right? If we could change our schedules as needed, if we could have students working in small groups when it's most important, rather than the current paradigm, whereas if you go into special ed, you get small groups, and otherwise you're in classes of 20 to 30 all day long in all subjects, right? That's a choice. These are not inevitable institutions. These are choices that we make that are resource allocation decisions. We can finance that by having larger groups at other times. We want to figure out how to get students and teachers to form strong relationships and have teachers work together and to get to what Deb called job and better professional development. When we worked with the districts, what we did is we took a bunch of data and we gave it to them, showing them what they were doing right now, how they were actually using their people, time, and money. And we got not just the business officials in the room, we got the superintendent, the business official, and the CAO, and this core leadership team. And this is part of my advice to you, together in the room in order to actually debate these things and to talk about kind of what can we actually do to really become more effective at improving student outcome with the resources we have. We had all the districts committed to increase their investment in expert-led collaboration time and job and better professional growth. Some of the districts were looking to change their models of service and special education to do more push in things that had a higher likelihood of success than the ones that they were currently doing. 2 districts were making improvements to their schedule processes to give more time in math and English to the students who were struggling in those subjects because they weren't doing it previously, and they were able to get the data to see that. Districts that are considering, one of them is considering moving to from a one-size-fits-all class size to push and support and flexible grouping. So these are the types of changes that you can do, and what we would like to actually suggest is that as an SBO, take the opportunity to there's a whole bunch of tools on the Smarter Spending website, on the ERS website, that you can actually use interactive exercises that allow you to kind of put all these things back on the table and start thinking about the big picture as you start doing your strategic planning processes. Organized strategic planning processes that consider the whole range of options. And in the interest of time, I will stop there. The presentation is available, and there's hard copies here. But I will turn the time over to the next speaker, or two.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Andy Fiorentino, the Assistant Superintendent for Business for Windsor Schools.
Thank you for having me here. We've heard some talk about PowerPoint theatrics. There is no PowerPoint, so there will be no theatrics, at least on screen. I'll try my best here. When I was asked to be part of this panel, I was pretty excited because I am pretty excited to be a business official or an assistant superintendent of business. And I want to start by giving you a little bit of background about myself and also about the district that I come from. One, my superintendent threatened me to say, look, it's about our brand, make sure you talk about Windsor, so I'm certainly going to do that. My background, I have a BS in business administration, but my experience is as a classroom teacher, as a building administrator for 7 years, both as an assistant principal and as a principal. And then I went to district office as this assistant superintendent of business. And it was really a little bit of a sales job for my superintendent because I wanted no part of just looking at numbers. And that's what I said. I said, I like being in front of the students. I like digging into student performance. And so when he asked me, he was very clear. He said, that's exactly why I want you in that position. He said, I want you with your number sense background, which, like I said, I struggle with sometimes, and that's where I'm tapping on some of my colleagues for that gene. Tell me a little bit more about BOCES aid, those kind of questions. But I think I bring some of that program approach to the seat as well. So that's my background. As far as the Windsor Central School District, I guess I consider us a medium-sized district. We're about 1,800 kids, so I guess some people in the room will say you're pretty small. We're located just outside of Binghamton, about 10 miles. We are a rural district. We have some farmers. In fact, our superintendent was a dairy farmer. At one point, he was the youngest superintendent in New York State at 30 years old. He's now the most senior in that Binghamton region. He's now in his, I believe, 10th year. Well, I know his 10th year because I came on and replaced him as middle school principal the year he started. Our budget is $36 million. We're dependent on state aid. About 53% comes from that foundation aid formula. Gap elimination, I heard one of the board members mention that earlier. It's hit us pretty hard. In 2009-10, from up to date, we've lost or been assessed about $12 million. Last year we did see some relief with some restoration, and our hit was only $500,000. So we had an opportunity. We had some funds that we weren't expecting that we could use and strategically put in place. But we also, through work with ERS, and sorry, Stephen, every time I think of ERS, I'm thinking employee retirement system. But with ERS, like I said, they opened our eyes to some things as well, as far as, here's some opportunities to reallocate some things. And I thought we're pretty good at that. But I think anytime you can sit in the room with other colleagues and you can collaborate and throw ideas back and forth, I think it ups your game a little bit. And so there's some things that we were able to put in place, I think, that are going to have a tremendous impact on student performance. One of the speakers earlier talked about the fact that how much money is spent on basically people. Well, we are a people business. Our product, our kids. And, that should be first and foremost. So that wasn't a surprise to me. How we allocate those resources, I think, is very, very important. And we do have a lot of control over. We may have finite budgets, but within that budget, there may be some gives and takes that we can do. So one of the gaps that we had that was out there, and we knew this going in, and it was confirmed by ERS as well, was this position that we hired this year, and it was a Director of Data and Accountability and Continuous Improvement. What that person did, or the gap we had, and what I hope to articulate is here's kind of the need, and here's how we tried to tackle it. We were very good, our district, at gathering data and looking at issues. But turning that data into information, both from student performance data to how a program is running, things like that, that's where we needed help. We needed help with building that action plan. So we had a person in our region that was an excellent professional developer, which we thought could be part of this position. We had a person that dealt with data every day. And so we're very hopeful that, if we put a job out there, perhaps we could get a person of that caliber, if not that person, somebody else. And it would fill a need. And we thankfully were able to fill that position. Now, that position was costly. It's an administrative position at a time when people are saying, geez, what are you doing hiring another administrator? Well, we're a pretty lean staff administratively, and a question came up earlier about how do you retain good teachers? You support them. And this was a way we could support teachers. This was a way we could help them with their data development and developing those plans on how to improve student performance. This is a person who took over our teacher orientation process. And I just have anecdotal results right now because we're just into school, but I can tell you that our new teachers are supported more than they've ever been, and I thought we did a pretty good job before she was here. So I think that was a perfect use of resources. And by the way, some of the things we won't have to do is bring in some outside professional development, which costs money. So there is an offset to some of that cost, which can be done. Another position that we had, and here was our problem, and I'll kind of give it both ways. Somebody mentioned technology. I think it came from that side of the room as being, sometimes do we spend too much, too little? Again, it's an efficiency standpoint. Are we using it to the best of our ability, or are we just introducing something that goes and sits on a shelf? And so a need in our district was for basically an instructional technology specialist. We had an individual on staff that was excellent at technology. That's his forte. He helps other teachers on his own. He was a guy that we could count on. However, he also taught a full load. He's a chemistry teacher, and his results, frankly, were okay. They were average. So we had another need there. We were constantly saying, how can we get our scores in chemistry up to where the rest of the region is? And so we saw an opportunity there, something he really wanted to do, and also gave us a chance to recruit a different teacher as well. However, there's the money aspect of that, which always seems to get in the way. So this was something we consciously sat around a table and said, what's a way we can get this on the cheap? You know, there's an expression we use, if it's free, it's for me. We weren't going to get it for free, but we thought there was a way that we could possibly mitigate some of the costs. So what we did is we approached another district who had a similar need. Then we talked to our specialists at BOCES and we said, is this a position that we could run through BOCES, make it a collaborative, okay, and then we could split some of the costs. What we found were approximately, I think it was 40% of the cost of this person is aidable. Now, we're a district with a point, I think it's a .740 BOCES ratio. We're getting that person now at about a third of the cost. In fact, we didn't hire one, we hired one from the other district as well, so we're about at 60% of what it would have cost us to hire that new person. But we've got, again, somebody who we thought through our recruitment process can really bring our chemistry classes to the next level, but we also have now that expert both for the secondary level and the elementary level that can really work with our teachers, again, to retain them, to support them on how to effectively use technology in the classroom. And, you know, also to give us, I'm not a technology expert, as you can see by my PowerPoint. Okay? However, if somebody can come in and show me, here's what it means in the classroom, here's what it costs, I can start to do that cost-benefit ratio and give my input there. So that was a critical position that I think we added. So I talked about some ads. Now, what were some of the, if it's free, it's for me, that we kind of worked with? Through some of ERS's research, they were analyzing some of our cleaning staff. We had a couple open positions, and we were debating whether we should fill them or not. ERS came back, and I'm going to pick on Stephen a little bit, but the geographics of our district are a little bit unique. We have 3 elementary schools. We're 110 square miles. So our buildings are pretty far apart. It makes it a challenge when it comes to staff because, one, in teaching, when you have 2 teachers and you have 2 class sizes of 15, you're thinking, or even 14, you're thinking, well, we could have one at 28, or do we have to keep 2? It's tough to go from 2 to 1 teachers. Sometimes we do have to add some teachers as well. But same thing with the cleaning staff as well. So what we did is we took some of their data, and they thought that we had, a ridiculous number that we were overstaffed. We could live with leaving those 2 positions and eliminating them. Also eliminating some TAs, and that allowed us again to free up some money to help us with class size of a 5th grade class that in one particular school where we would have had class sizes of 28, which we think is too big. We're okay with low 20s. You know, that's where we want to be, but once it gets past that 28, close to 30, we struggle with that. So that was a way that we could at least offset some of those costs as well. Master schedule work we did throughout all our schools, and one of the needs or one of the issues that we had is, you know, I want to say 6 or 7 years back, we thought, you know, we really need some academic intervention. You know, we need some really effective teachers to deliver it. And really you need effective teachers across the board. However, we were putting our best teachers in that position. And they were doing a great job with it. However, when we sat back and we looked at the face time in front of the most kids, we were basically taking our best teachers and putting them in front of kids the least amount of time. So we've kind of shifted back and put our best teachers back into the classroom. In the middle school, one of the master schedule adjustments we made is we wanted to make a concerted effort to give more time for ELA and more time for math. So we have 2 teams. One was what we call a split team in the middle school. We had 2 teams, but what we did is we kind of targeted, all right, who are our best instructors in ELA and math? And what research do we have behind it? Well, we can look at past performance of the kids that they've had. And what we found is why don't we give them an hour of instruction for math and ELA, And then for social studies and science, let's cut that back some. Let's take some transition time out. And we're going to have 2 teachers, and one of them, frankly, was our least effective math teacher. But he was an outstanding science teacher. 6th grade science, it's certification. It's an elementary certification, so we're in compliance there. And now what we have, like I said, is we have our best teachers in front of those kids for a longer period of time. Some of our teachers that are not as effective that we're still working with, they're teaching what they're to their strength. They're teaching all the kids in that grade at 30-minute increments. And then we can also supplement some of the content from social studies, some of the content from science into ELA, into math, and make that a great approach. So did we lose collaboration time? No, we didn't. We had 2 teams that were meeting at different times. Now we have all of those teachers in that grade level meeting at the same time, and they're able to make plans and make decisions and so forth. So, knock on wood, it's going well. We'll see what happens when the test scores come out as well. In the high school, we thought it'd be a good idea to there's some benefits to looping if you have effective teachers. We have a very high-performing social studies department. So now, Global 9 and 10, the kids loop with that teacher. Again, a little bit of a master schedule nightmare, but I think it's going to be well worth it as far as student performance. One controversial decision, it's funny, as we sat around the administrative table, there's people on both sides of this, and it'll be curious on how this comes out. We have an outstanding teacher that is in the middle school. She's also very good at delivering some professional development. We wanted to pull her out of the classroom, which is contradictory to, you're getting your best teacher and you're pulling her out of the classroom. But we also wanted her to spread some of her skills across the school. So how could we do both? What we did is we compromised in a way. She is teaching 2 classes, and she's freed up for 3 periods. And the cost of that was slightly larger class sizes to our 7th grade in the courses that she teaches. So we thought that was a pretty good trade-off. And the very last item that I'll talk about, and we're pretty excited about this, we often look around and see in other districts who's retiring, who's not. Is there, a staff member that's out there that we could possibly get, which we're not very popular with BOCES right now because 2 of their employees are now working for us, and one of them was very, very good, and the second one is very, very good as well. She was a retirement, though. She was an excellent literacy specialist. She provided a lot of professional development throughout the region. Okay, her past background was a elementary teacher, a kindergarten teacher. We happened to have a kindergarten opening. What our vision was is we wanted almost a lab. We wanted a classroom that other teachers could visit and see best practices in action in a literacy specialist. It had to be a unique individual who could do that job. She was the one person who could fill that job. So basically our goal was if we could get her to come to Windsor, even though she's retiring, apply for the waiver, and if we can work with the state and show why this is a unique position, then it's something that we could do, and we did so at a competitive salary, and she doesn't need benefits. So we saved the benefit package, which, a family plan in the Windsor district is $18,000 and change. So I thought that was a great score. Now we have somebody who is, servicing 17 very lucky kindergarten first grader. It's a multi-age class that we put her in. And we have a lab where we can have teachers come visit and see a structure that's in place, see a practice that she's doing, and learn from that teacher as well. So I think there are things we can do with limited budgets. Am I ever going to say we have enough money? No. I want more money next year. So, Chuck, if you can pass that on and we can get that, that'd be great. But I do think we do control a lot. And I think the message I want to give is, take the things that you can control, maximize those, and the things you can't, you can spend your time admiring the problem, or you can spend your time, like I said, trying to make a better situation. But thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. And lastly, we will hear from Victor Hull from the APW. I'm not even going to attempt it. He's the District School Business Administrator.
Thank you. Just as a way of introduction, I have entered I'm one of the mongrels in the group here. I entered school business as a mid-career change. I spent the first half of my career as a financial executive in the commercial airline industry. And if you think those two are vastly different, actually, when I think about it, both of them make massive investments in facilities and equipment. Both are labor-intensive. Both of them are highly impacted by government regulation, and both of them are heavily impacted by economic trends. So they're not all that different. The difference would be in the approach to managing finances. Our district is located, it's a rural suburban district located in upstate New York in Oswego County. We service an area of 373 miles, and right now, 53% of all the real estate in our district is tax exempt, and all of the major employers have pilots. So right now our state aid ratio is about 75%. So our ability to raise revenue either on the local level or on the state level is virtually non-existent, simply because of the circumstances that exist. Over the past few years, our school district acknowledged its declining enrollment and its limits on revenues and closed 3 of our school buildings and consolidated our facilities in order to be able to operate our district on the revenue that was available to us. And having succeeded in putting our financial house in order, we had just embarked on the process of focusing on improving student achievement when, through wonderful coincidence, and Mr. Szuberla, we were offered the opportunity to work with ERS, and ERS provided us with the expertise and the framework to really analyze what needed to be done in our particular district. Now, I did bring a couple of slides that address specific steps that we took, and that will respond to a few of our audience who asked, let's hear some practical things. Now, I do recognize also that we're a rural suburban district in upstate. We're not a city district. But there is an underlying message here, which is not this is what to do, but rather that when you view these or when you consider the topic, you have to understand school resources as being more than cash. School resources involve time, facilities, and people. And when you sign, for example, teacher contracts, you're signing up these people for 185 days a year. Whether you utilize them for 5 out of 7 periods or 7 out of 9 periods, however your master schedule is set up, is a matter of district management. And what happened in our process with ERS was a real exercise in data mining and deep drilling, but we came to understand that we were not fully utilizing the resources we had. And then when you come to questions, for example, of facilities and the argument of we don't have enough classrooms or enough labs, the fact is that's the result of choices you make regarding class size and master scheduling. So if you have the opportunity to analyze the entire resource picture as a whole, you can redesign how you use existing resources without making the argument or the excuse that we can't progress because we don't have more resources. So with that, there's a couple of slides that just point out things that we did within our district. And the first one may seem odd, but the fact of the matter is in the school business, in the school world, we're working with people, and some people are very enthusiastic about change and some are not. So as we proceeded with the process, we made a strategic decision to offer a retirement incentive. And I've listed here what's already been accomplished. That original incentive included 10 people and 1 administrator. 3 of them do not reach their retirement milestone until the current fiscal year, so they'll be leaving at that point. But there is a reason for this. This isn't a gravy train. This is an opportunity to right-size the staff and to free up resources so that we can redeploy them in areas where we need them. Reducing grade level sections, we had become spoiled over a number of years to the point where we had class sizes of 11 to 14 people, and that ties up a lot of teachers in a lot of classrooms. So by simply changing those class sizes, we were able to free up both rooms and teachers to focus on things like advanced placement courses and other training. We have already begun the process, and our board has adopted and our community has become involved in the fact that we need to extend the school day. We need more contact time. And from a purely financial standpoint, this is a winner because if you can get a little bit more contact time within the same day, you don't have to hire additional people to do it. You can achieve more with the same number of staff and the same size facility. So we began the process of training, and we did engage another consulting firm, the National Center for Time and Learning, to assist us in fashioning master schedules that make maximum use of our existing personnel. That will be deployed in September of 2016. We also, implemented common planning time at all grade levels and embedded professional development. And after I leave you tonight, I'm rushing back to the district for our audit committee meeting because we're accepting our financial statements. And it's very interesting to note that we saved a massive amount of money. We tripled our professional development and saved money on it because we used to take the shotgun approach of teacher scheduling opportunities for professional development, requesting a sub, and being absent from the district. And they tended to be focused on different areas. By adopting a strategic plan for pupil academic improvement and then focusing on our development on that topic, but also allowing teachers to obtain that training together as a team, we were able to move toward our goals, but interestingly, our sub-expenditures dropped by more than $100,000 in 1 year. And our cost for external conferences also dropped. So while that was initially implemented as a focus on student achievement, it had real financial results as well. We have increased our pre-K to full day, and this is simply a recognition of the fact that kids were not well prepared when they entered both kindergarten and first grade, and we're trying to take the long view on our approach to managing and budgeting, so we felt the investment at this point was well made. We have added additional on-site summer school. At one time we participated in a county-wide summer school, and our participation wasn't excellent in part because of transportation and also because kids and parents didn't take it seriously. So for the first time this year we brought it in-house and had much greater results. Because we have freed up some teachers through slightly larger class sizes and for fully utilizing all the periods available, we're able to begin foreign language offerings in the middle school. We have introduced a STEM program that's in place now. We've introduced a very popular robotics program, and we have addressed the community's and the Board of Education's concerns by offering advanced placement courses, which we were not able to offer simply because of scheduling and facilities in the past. So these are some of the things that are new to our program as a result of our work with ERS. We are addressing the extracurricular thing. We have not canceled any sports program, but we are at extracurriculars, although we're trying to keep a close eye on that cost factors there. We are offering additional phys ed, and as a rather humorous note on the first bullet, we're now offering open gym at every lunch period. And instead of paying teachers to walk the halls and provide security, we put the teachers in the gym. And now, instead of kids hurling food at each other for 30 minutes every day, they spend about 90 seconds eating lunch and the next 28 minutes raising hell in the gym and burning off energy before they return to their afternoon classes. So that turned out to be more beneficial. And if you think this is a joke, the nutritional standards require that we put fruit and vegetables on every tray, whether the kid wants it or not. And we had a terrible problem with projectiles flying all over the building. So our food service people figured out that if they sliced the food first, they wouldn't throw as easily, which they did. However, our dumpster contracts doubled for all the stuff that wound up in the garbage. So a piece of advice to you, send them to the gym. It saves you a lot of money. We did also find that within our special ed programs, we were not fully compliant with a continuum of education, and we brought ourselves up to speed with that. All still within our current budget and current staffing, and we have added programs for autism and 1511 because those were unaddressed areas. So basically my takeaways from this are, and forgive me because to some this may sound like blasphemy, but there are sufficient resources within districts to fund academic priorities. I think one of my tasks when I came to my district was that my district was effectively bankrupt and had about $5.5 million in short-term debt outstanding. And in trying to figure out where all that money went, it was absolutely amazing to discover how much money gets spent on Post-it notes and pastel-colored file folders. And I'm not being facetious. I'm just saying that if you don't really look at it, you'll be amazed at where the money goes. So I feel confident, having been through the experience, in telling you that at least when it comes to academic priorities, there are sufficient funds, and that you need to, with the right tools, you can take a really serious look at where your resources are and how they could be better deployed. It is also essential to plan strategically and to make all decisions with the idea of what is the present and future impact, rather than simply being bowled over by the idea that there's pressure from parents or the school board wants some sort of new programs. Also, the district must adopt and effectively communicate goals. That everybody needs to understand what the purpose is. The job is not to have a nice job and keep the train on the tracks. The job is to obtain specific outcomes from our work every day. So that's our particular experience, and I recommend it to others who haven't been through it.
Thank you very much. Just a few quick questions. It sounds like these districts benefited from ERS a lot. What are some things that districts can do to create a collaborative system of strategic resource use without the intensive services from an organization like ERS?
Well, one, I think developing that process, and I can't say enough about our work with the ERS because it is a process, though. And I think what we took most out of that is this is something we could replicate. What initially attracted us to the program was funds. You know, we could get some money by participating in this program, and they would also give us some recommendations, and we could give or take the research. You know, if the research was something that we believed in and we thought it was a good product, then great, we're going to benefit there as well. But again, the process I think that we learned from that was, one, you have to have time set aside to meet with your colleagues. One of the things that I'm very fortunate in our Broome Tioga BOCES, we have regular meetings scheduled at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, with the colleagues from the different districts. And at each part of that meeting is a discussion on, all right, who's got something that maybe can be replicated, or who's got a need that maybe can be filled. So how did we find out that this one special teacher was retiring? It was announced at that meeting. And we found that out, and we thought, you know, let's give it a shot. The worst thing is, you know, no, she's not interested. You know, as far as, you know, the other points that I made with the data person, you know, we liked the position. BOCES had a pretty good model there, so we wanted to attract that candidate. Not that specific one, but a candidate like that to replicate that into our school. So it's learning from each other.
What school districts can do without having a contractor like ERS to guide them through this process, I would say there's two things. One is that ERS has a number of tools available. There's a resource check where you can go through a process of just seeing where you stand. And there's a budget process. It's actually a game where it forces you to talk collaboratively in your district about a number of different options that would better align your resources to student achievement and other things as well. So, and ASBO has recently put those on our website to make them more accessible to New York State school districts. But the second thing I would say is collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. I believe we have a lot of the knowledge for this within our New York State school districts, and the more that school board members, superintendents, business officials buy into this and talk about it, we will find solutions through sharing.
Two quick adds to that. Thank you for the pitch on the tools, and thanks for linking them on your website. Shane, I don't know if he's still here, referenced the Smarter School Spending website, and there's a bunch of tools there as well for, and so you should definitely check that out. And I would also say, at the risk of being maybe pedantic, but don't forget the big stuff. And I say that when we looked at teacher retention in New York, we saw that you guys are retaining about 95% of your teachers, which is about the theoretical maximum. When you think of a 40-year career with retirements, that's 2.5%. You got move-ins and deaths and other things going on. 95% is really high. But it was 95-ish% in these districts that we studied for the top performers and the bottom performers pre and post the tenure process. And there are, that is not a cost strategic. So that's not a strategic plan for strategic retention, and it costs very little money to have a huge impact. And so don't forget the big things. That's just one example of them. There are some big opportunities here in New York that districts are systematically ignoring, and we need to actually they're unpopular, right? And so we need to actually take a stand and exercise leadership and do the hard things and not ignore them. So.
And now we'll open it up to audience questions. And again, wait for the microphone, please. Sorry.
Good morning. I'm Brian Freed, and I'm the Assistant Superintendent for Business, Finance, and Operations in Millbrook Central School District in Dutchess County. I have a question and then a comment. The question is for Victor. And Victor, you talked about how you went from 5 sections down to 4 in I think it was middle school, but you talked about grade level teams. So presumably there's either a value add about that, or you've made a reduction of staff of 0.2 in those areas. So my question is, which did you do, and if you, what was the value add? What did you assign those teachers to do? That's my first question.
Well, first of all, it was not a reduction in staff. It was a value add. And much of that was focused on some of the programs that were mentioned about offering social studies, language, and some other interventions at the elementary level.
Okay, so they were specifically reassigned to be able to...
Correct.
Okay. All right. And I guess the other question is for you also. And you said that there was a reduction in sub-time, and the way that you reorganized your professional development, you saved about $100,000 in subs in a year. Can you talk about that a little bit more specifically about why that took place?
Well, as you know, many teachers elect to participate in professional development opportunities, but the more recently certified are required to obtain a basic number of hours. And we previously had left it up to teachers to select their opportunities. So they would enroll in conferences or seminars or events at BOCES or elsewhere, and anytime they were absent from the building, we had to provide a substitute. So we found people, certainly scheduling in advance. It was properly handled, but the fact is it was totally unfocused, and we were covering the cost of their professional development. So by offering, first of all, simply by offering opportunities within the district so they didn't have to leave the district, eliminated the need for them being absent. But it also, and it had the value added of allowing us to focus on development that directly addressed our particular student needs.
Thanks. And then the comment, to whatever degree possible, it would be, so this was a great session, and I guess I would say it would be really important for the continued collaboration with ASBO and NISCUS and NISBA to be able to roll out these initiatives so everybody's getting the same message, so as we kind of get our marching orders and we're able to talk about the continued work. So that's just a comment.
We intend to keep talking about this.
Other questions? We've got one over here. Yeah, she's good.
Hi, my name is Ocasio Wilson. I'm from Suny, the University Center of Academic and Workforce Development. So I'm in a different perspective of adult education. I'm interested in just broad feedback on a couple things: standards for professional learning, as well as incentives. What type of community development incentives were embedded in this professional learning or awards programs, things that get people excited about the outcomes? Thanks.
Well, one, I think there's a tremendous opportunity to work with universities that are in the area. I know that Windsor has a lot of agreements and a lot of work with SUNY Binghamton there, and they've been great. Some of the benefits, and I think people didn't realize this, in Windsor, part of our tax-paying base is what we call industrial park there, where we have Frito-Lay and Felchers and a bunch of different businesses there. So trying to get some support from them. We implemented this year as well a summer program, and we were able to set aside some funds for it, and what we were hoping to do is to kind of get that summer slide, and let's see if we can have the kids come back without losing too much information or too many skills over that summer. One of the things we did is we approached Visions Credit Union and other things. Is there a way you can support that? So getting some collaboration in that aspect. And I think that was a big gain for us there. I'm not sure if I answered your whole question, but that was some of the ways that we felt that we could get our business people into our classrooms.
Can I give maybe a more, I don't know if it's more philosophical or more broad-based New York answer to this? I think if you were to describe the paradigm of professional development and incentives for professional development in New York, at the highest level when you compare it to other places, I would say that the vast majority of professional development dollars go through lanes in this state, and people going to colleges and getting course credit, and a lot of money is spent on that. And there is very little research to suggest that that is effective. And so if you're thinking about kind of going to this job-embedded professional development and professional growth and getting teachers excited about it and finding money to pay for that and everything, there's a paradigm shift. We'd like to shift the money away from lanes and towards other ways of financing participation in either professional development or in becoming more effective as an outcome. And so what we want to do is both shift that and make it, because the research on professional development is kind of contradictory in some places, but it's pretty clear that most of the professional development that happens isn't very effective. And it becomes more effective when you get it down into the school community and get it job embedded, as we've been talking about. So the ROI goes up, but also teachers enjoy it more, and it starts changing the culture of the school, and you start building this community. And so this is the paradigm shift we'd like to see, is away from this kind of college credit model towards job embedded in the classroom professional development, where you're collaborating with teachers and developing a culture of continuous improvement and learning from each other.
And I think a terrific example of that is Windsor getting redeploying resources to hire a data director that then supported teachers, and they felt excited about what they were trying to accomplish because of this support, and that produced an incentive for them. So incentives are an excellent question, and I think that's got to be part of this discussion.
Yeah. Oh my God.
In terms of incentives, also I mentioned we made a major commitment to offering advanced placement courses in cooperation with several colleges, and each college requires advanced training for the teachers who are to provide advanced placement courses, and so the school picked up the cost of their registration materials, food and lodging for those teachers who elected to take on advanced placement duties.
Oh, we've got a question over here.
It's really a comment to support paradigm shift. My name is University, and I have worked with P-12 schools in the consultant role, and I also work at the Center for Policy Research at Suny on independent studies. One is on grading practices. The research, one of the things I did was a little research on best practices in professional development, and it supports. I'm not the only one that has.
I'm not the only one who has looked at this question, but it's exactly that it's on-site, job-embedded, and ongoing, which you have totally, accomplished in the way you've set up your program. And so having common planning time on a regular basis is a great way to push in professional development, and it is remarkable how little it's done, but what a big impact it could have.
Steve, we kind of cut you short with your presentation, and we only have 2 of the 8 school districts that you've worked with. What other takeaways, what other items or issues that you addressed with those other 6 school districts that, shifted the paradigm, that were able to make school districts use their resources better, and both in terms of on a local impact, but what other things you're talking about that also can impact on a statewide level?
Yeah. That's a good question. There's this fundamentally, when you have processes about resource strategic planning that are broken, which I submit that they are, and for some of the reasons that we talked about with you guys as business officials wanting to be helping with ROI, but a lot of the things just aren't on the table for you. That it's easy to say that the solution to the problem is to give data, good data, and so we come in and we get data, and we have this process where the different districts are coming in and looking at the data and trying to make changes. I'm trying to kind of answer your question in a way that kind of speaks both to the 8 districts and the state. It turns out that most of the data that we gave to the districts to actually look at and say, this is how you're using your people, time, and money, is data that is actually collected by the state already. Not all of it, but the vast majority of it. And it is possible for the state to take on a role of, instead of just collecting it for compliance purposes, processing it, calculating these metrics, and reporting it back in timely ways to districts to actually make better decisions about their resources. That will not solve the process problems that the districts have, but it will actually allow for a much more strategic and informed set of decisions. And districts can't always do this themselves because the state can actually show them not only how they're doing, but how it stacks up with other districts. And so it's kind of a unique role that the state can play with this. And so what we tried to do here was to do the same thing, kind of in a microcosm. Here's 8 districts. Let's compare these into other places and find the opportunities. And that was really the approach, was to use data to determine what the big opportunities were and then focus them on that. We've already kind of said what the big opportunities were in terms of both the things that needed to change the most in the state and the things that we're not doing that would have a big impact. But that, I don't know if I answered your question.
I'd like to add to that. I was on the ERS steering committee, so I had the opportunity to listen to all the school districts and talk about their findings, much as we heard today from these 2. And one of them really struck me, Tioga. They had a very dynamic instructional leader who had led this interface with ERS, and she was so fired up about this whole process and all that they were doing. She said, but we are just so desperate to hire these 3 people, but we don't have the money. And ERS had done a resource check on them, and they were under-resourced. And so I looked on my runs, and I looked how far they were off from full adequate funding according to the foundation formula that we enacted in the state in 2007. It was supposed to be fully funded by 2010. And sure enough, they were far below that adequate level. Then I looked at all the others, and they were all below. So I would argue that one of the things the state needs to do, and now that we're closing in on eliminating the GEA, is get back to foundation aid, commit to a phase-in process that's a defined period of time, not 20 years, and get on with that.
Just kind of a reflection, having worked on the process. I think for me one of the takeaways was we need to give districts kind of a safe place to play in and look at numbers. One thing that, in fact, when I had to call some of the superintendents, is, kind of, hi, I'm Chuck Szuberla, and I'm here from the state, and I'm here to help you. I want to take a look at your resource allocation, and are you doing things effectively? And what we promised everybody was confidentiality, which is kind of funny in hindsight now, because obviously, we didn't tell people they couldn't talk about it, but we promised that initially we wouldn't talk about it. And so the challenge for us in terms of scaling it up, and this has been true of a number of systems that presented data in a way that were helpful to districts. The ones that seem to work, for example, the Lower Hudson Valley has a system where they will show you your values in certain categories and the maximum and minimum values, for example, per pupil special ed spending. And it's, in government there's, a huge desire for transparency, but oftentimes that gets in the way of people being able to take a look at their own numbers in a safe way and come to decisions. And I think if we had said, we've got this great project, EOS is going to work with you, we promise that we will publish the findings as widely as possible, I'm not sure, frankly, we would have had any districts take us up on our offer. So I think that was one of the lessons I learned, and something I will think about is, as you mentioned, how do we scale these things up?
We have a question in the back there.
Hi, I'm Allison Armour-Garb, and I have a question about the data that you found useful in this work. Specifically, I'm curious whether any of the data from teacher evaluation was useful, the scores, or the data that came from the classroom observations. Was it useful in identifying teachers' strengths and weaknesses, in justifying your plans for redeploying or offering retirement incentives, or for enabling you to target professional development to teachers' identified needs? And if it wasn't useful specifically to you during these processes, do you see that it has any potential to be useful? Thank you.
We looked a lot at the rubric stuff. We have the Marshall rubric in Windsor, so we did use that as far as what are the principals saying, about certain staff members. We looked at some assessment data. We kind of took the whole picture. We tried to do a multi-year approach as well. But yes, it was used. Can I say it was heavily weighed upon? In some cases, yes. In other cases, no. The vast majority, I think if you look at the New York State, where teachers fall, most of them are in that effective, highly effective range, whether that's a true indication of their abilities or not. So I think we cherry-picked certain things, absolutely. It was used, but, it's tough for me to quantify how much went into that decision.
Can I make one more comment to her, or answer to her question? There is with this teacher effectiveness data, it's easy to see if we call this high-stakes data, right? There's high-stakes things that come from it, managing teachers out, permanent career decisions of work promotions, raises, lack of raises, all of these different things, which I would call high-stakes uses of this data. There's a more important subset of uses of this data that you were getting at, which is what I would call low-stakes uses of this high-stakes data. And it's restaffing and reassigning teachers. Some of the biggest impacts you see in simulations from the use of this data came from work done in Tennessee, where they were actually staffing teachers to play to their strengths with like the students groups that they were the best with. Huge impacts, and in fact, they found it because the school that was outperforming everybody else was doing that, right? And so there are things that you can do with reassigning teachers with this data that can have an enormous impact. And some of it's minimizing the reach of the less effective teachers or expanding the reach of the most effective teachers, but some of it's not. Some of it's actually just saying, hey, I'm better, this teacher's better at math, let's put them in with math. And these things actually tend to have a higher impact than professional development, at least theoretically. And so I would encourage people to experiment with them because I think it's a huge opportunity.
And getting people on the right seat on the bus, I think, is something we struggle with every day. I go back to that chemistry teacher, not a poor teacher, but did we want better as far as better achievement with some of the things with our Regents results and things like that after years of data? He was doing fine, but he actually even loved technology more. So this was an easy fix. Let's get him in something that we know he's highly effective in, and also have the opportunity to improve instruction in that area as well. So, like I said, it's difficult. Each decision was unique, so it's hard for me to say, yes, gee, we're relying on just that or just this.
My name is Ken Bond. I'm a partner at Squire Patton Boggs. I'm referred to as a bond lawyer. You guys aren't currently clients of ours, but maybe you have been. Anyway, that's my day job. In my other life, one of the things I do is teach a public finance law class at Albany Law School as an adjunct. And to make a long story short, two of my students got interested in this whole notion that you raised, that there's so much property that's off the tax rolls and all the businesses pay taxes based on pilots. In 2013, there was a report from the state controller on this very topic, and he reported that 42% of all the real property in the state's off the tax rolls. So my students wrote an article which is currently in publication. If you want to get the New York State Business Law Journal. It's a publication of the New York State Bar Association. It's in the back of the paper. I think it's like page 50 or something. It's a very long, boring article, and there are no pictures, and there's no funny jokes in it. And I think I sent it to you, Mike, right? But it makes an argument that it is ridiculous for nonprofits and governments not to pay for government services, and that concept can be expanded to include school services. And I won't go on, but I won't elaborate anymore, but I just want to let you know that on this Saturday, day after tomorrow, at the Saratoga Hilton, the fall meeting of the Municipal Law Section of the New York State Bar Association is going to have its meeting, and at 9 o'clock in the morning, my two students, the mayor of Saratoga Springs and Professor Christine Chung of Albany Law School, will be a panel discussing this article. It is open to all of you to come for a $25 fee, because we thought this is important enough. If you want to come attend it, you can. I don't know if the article is online. It's been emailed around a lot. You can probably get it from Mike. He could send it on to you. It will be on the New York State Bar Association webpage after this article. As also, the same article is going to be presented, including the students at an American Bar Association program in Louisville in October. But this is a huge issue, and it really, I think, drives the fundamentals of your big problem that you need more revenues. And, you're going nuts here trying to make it all work with what you have. This is a huge amount of money that just isn't paid, and it's highly inequitable, at least in my view. Last note, my name isn't on this article. I'll tell you why. My partners, every time I write something, has to go to the censors, Our firm represents some of the largest not-for-profits in the United States. They said, you can't have your name on this because it's going to offend a lot of clients. So it's a very controversial issue. Nonprofits have a strong lobby against this idea. They don't like pilots and so forth. But it's really important to governments. It's really important to school districts. I urge you to read the article. I urge you to come up to Saratoga Springs for $25 and see the program on Saturday morning. Thanks. And I have to leave. Great program, by the way. Very enjoyable. It's good to get updated on all this stuff you're doing.
We're going to take one more question. It's all you.
So I had a quick question. I'm Jesse Levin. I introduced myself already. Steve, I have a question about the comparison that you made at the start, and I want to know what the baseline or the reference group of districts that you were looking at, because you said that they were balanced in terms of cost of living, but there are also student needs to think about. So I'm getting back at those cost factors, student needs and also outcomes. So were they also balanced on those things? Because you came up with these comparisons saying, well, on average they had 5 extra positions here and X positions here, and maybe there was a reason for some of those positions, and I just want to know whether it was really balanced.
They were roughly balanced. We did as best we could to balance on student needs, cost of living, and
outcomes.
The outcomes, they were all urban. Some of the outcomes here were actually higher because we had a mix in New York.
Okay.
So, but,
so we heard a lot of information today, really terrific. Hopefully I saw you've been taking notes, so hopefully you'll bring some stuff home with you. Just to kind of boil it down real quick, if your head's spinning from all this information, 3 things you can take away. So first of all, we heard that there's a delicate balance between the amount of resources needed and how the resources are used. Both are important. The higher the standards and the further the students are from meeting those standards, the more important both adequate resources and strategic resource use are. So we're not saying don't give us money. We're saying let's use our money that we do have well. Secondly, the role of the business official is changing to that of the education CFO. So a strategic partner capable of collaborating and understanding that different investments will produce different results academically. And so just keeping in mind that student success is the key. That's why we're all here, right? And then 3, strategic resource use occurs at both the state and local level. Both state and local leaders must be mindful that it's not about how much or how spent, but how much and how spent. So I just want to thank the Rockefeller Institute for hosting this here, thank the New York State Association of School Business Officials, our wonderful panelists, and all of you for coming. Thank you very much.